Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a really radical definition of leadership. It's a countercultural one drawn straight from the sources you've shared with us.
It really is.
And it's this idea where true strength, real leadership strength, actually starts with letting go of control. I mean, when you picture a leader, that conventional image just pops right into your head, The confident, commanding, decisive.
Always has the 5-year plan ready to go.
Exactly. That whole worldview is rooted in human power and, well, retaining control. But here's the tension we're diving into today. What if those very qualities, that relentless need for self-reliance and total control, what if they're actually the express keys to exhaustion?
Isolation, yeah.
And to an authority so fragile it just shatters the moment any real pressure hits.
That is the absolute core paradox this material explores. In our, chaotic, fast-moving world, the sources argue that the greatest advantage a leader can have is not more strategy.
Or more charisma.
Not at all. It's the genuine courage to surrender. And this isn't a passive retreat. It's an active, intentional choice. It's a leadership that's anchored not in self-confidence, but firmly in God-confident.
And obedient.
And unwavering obedience to guidance that's beyond yourself.
So the core thesis for this deep dive, then, is that true, enduring authority really only begins when you release control. We're exploring how influence is found in release, not in retention.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Because, surrender sounds like a 4-letter word in any leadership context.
It really does. It sounds like giving up.
Right. But the sources, they define it differently. It's not throwing up your hands in defeat, but as an active, intentional alignment with guidance, with a plan that you can't fully see or control.
And that right there is a courageous choice from the get-go.
It has to be.
It is, because you're pushing back against the entire worldly model of what success is supposed to look like. We are seeing a crisis among modern leaders.
Oh yeah, the burnout is real.
It's relentless demands, exhaustion, anxiety, and it's all because they believe they're solely responsible for mastering things that are frankly uncontrollable. The world's message is just so loud, take charge, push forward.
If it fails, it's on you.
Precisely. But the sources are crystal clear. This self-reliant, control-obsessed authority, it's built like a castle on sand.
A castle on sand. That's such a sticky analogy.
It looks impressive for a moment, maybe from a distance, but it's utterly vulnerable to every single storm that comes its way. It lacks durability.
It's brittle. That relentless pursuit of control just drains your clarity and your peace.
And that's where the historical examples in the material become so compelling. If we look at King Saul, he's like the quintessential modern CEO, right?
I hired for the resume. The outward qualities.
Exactly. His stature, his charisma, his ability to command a room. But his authority eroded for one reason. He could not surrender.
I remember that story. He was always acting on impulse, wasn't he? He was relying on his own understanding of how a battle should go instead of just sticking to the guidance he'd been given.
Precisely. Saul's story is the ultimate case study in leadership failure caused by self-reliance. He tried to force outcomes, he grasped for power, and his entire legacy just fell apart.
So who's the contrast then?
Well, you contrast that with King David. Now, David was far from perfect. He made huge, spectacular mistakes.
Oh, definitely.
But his strength emerged when he consistently chose surrender over his own self-assertion.
So can you give us a concrete example of that, something that feels relevant to a leader today?
Yeah, think about the moment when David had Saul helpless in a cave. The perfect opportunity to end the whole thing, secure his own throne right then and there.
Human strategy would scream, take him out, claim your destiny.
Of course, but David chose to spare his life. And that wasn't passivity. It was a radical act of surrender. He submitted to God's timing and justice instead of his own desire for vengeance or immediate gain.
It was a long game decision.
Rooted in humility, yeah. That single choice showed that real influence, resilient influence, grows through humility and patient obedience, not through impulsive power grabs.
That completely reframes surrender. It's not checking out of the process. It's checking in with a higher guidance system.
Yes.
And the ultimate example the sources bring up here is Moses at the Red Sea. Human instinct just screamed for a strategy. They were trapped.
They needed a 5-point plan. Right now.
Right. Cross the water or fight the entire Egyptian army. And Moses, who was always so aware of his own limitations, a reluctant leader from the start.
He became the instrument of deliverance just by obeying a command that made absolutely no worldly sense. Raise your staff. He relinquished the burden of having to create the solution.
He just became the instrument for the guidance he was given.
Exactly. Surrender produced strength.
Right.
Relinquishing control generated an influence that literally reshaped history.
So, if that's the foundational principle, this radical release of control, how does that change how we act day to day? Because that's where the rubber meets the road, right?
Right.
We need to move from the paradox to the practical.
And what's so fascinating here is that surrendered leadership isn't just some abstract philosophy. It has these profound practical dimensions. It's all about operational alignment.
Okay, so what's step one?
The first practical step is anchoring your leadership in God confidence, not self-confidence.
Okay, but wait. How do you define God confidence in a decision-making context? Isn't there a risk that it just becomes an excuse for inaction? Like faith without any effort?
That's a critical question, and no, that's not it at all. God confidence in this context is the filter you apply. It means you stop assessing decisions primarily through the lens of immediate outcome.
Like quarterly earnings or popular approval?
Exactly. And instead, you filter them through integrity and obedience to eternal principles.
Okay, give us a scenario.
Let's say you're a leader facing a major acquisition. Looks great on paper, but it requires you to ethically compromise a core value. Or it means running your team into the ground for a year straight.
Okay.
Self-confidence says, I can muscle through this. The outcome is worth the cost. God confidence starts with prayerful reflection. It starts by discerning if the guidance aligns with your values, with your calling, regardless of the immediate financial reward.
So the application is to start big decisions, not just with spreadsheets, but with silence.
Discern guidance over the noise of market pressure. It makes the pursuit of peace a strategic asset, not some soft luxury.
And that leads right into the idea of authority through service, not domination. The sources point directly to Jesus' model in the book of Matthew, where real greatness is found in becoming a servant.
That's right. Influence expands when others are empowered, not dominated. A leader operating from control, they want to consolidate power. They want to be the irreplaceable link.
They micromanage everything.
Everything. A surrendered leader, though, knows that their authority comes from multiplying their impact through others.
So for someone listening right now, maybe managing a team, what's the actionable takeaway there?
Look at your week. Identify areas where you are unnecessarily retaining control, maybe just for your own ego or comfort, and then delegate authority, not just tasks.
Which is a big difference.
A huge difference. Mentor others with the explicit goal of making them better than you are in their specific domain, and then celebrate their growth louder than your own successes.
This all seems to hinge on cultivating that divine guidance. The sources call it strategic listening.
Mm-hmm.
And they reference the story of Samuel, who as a boy needed that humility and attentiveness to even recognize the quiet whisper of God. It was easy to miss.
It is easy to miss. Divine listening is foundational, and it requires intentional disciplined practice. We often treat prayer like, a quick wish list before we dive into our day.
The to-do list for God.
Right. But the sources define prayer as attentive dialogue. It's sitting still long enough for guidance to actually penetrate the noise. And it also means deep scriptural meditation, not as a religious duty, but as essential strategic input. The scripture is described as a lamp to your feet. It shapes your judgment.
So it's not just a feel-good exercise. It's about aligning your operational plan with a proven compass. And there's a phenomenal real-world example of this. S. Truett Cathy of Chick-fil-A.
Absolutely. Think about the audacity of that decision.
Yeah.
He prioritized rest and worship by closing the entire business on Sundays.
That's submitting a core profit-driven strategy, giving up 1/7 of your potential revenue to a spiritual value. That's a massive commercial sacrifice.
It is. But how do you convince stakeholders today that closing on Sunday is a move of strength, not just, a philosophical hobby?
It's a question.
Because it's an act of profound God confidence. By making that commitment, he reinforced the culture, he attracted employees who shared that value, and he inadvertently created this unique brand identity that stood for integrity.
So the decision, rooted in that surrender and obedience, actually created a more enduring and profitable legacy than if he just chased every last dollar.
A far more enduring one, yes. That kind of alignment is what separates lasting impact from temporary success that just burns out.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the sources just hammer this point. External effectiveness is inseparable from the inner life. Leadership without inner replenishment is, Well, it's just unsustainable.
You can't pour from an empty cup. It's impossible, especially if you're trying to control everything around you. The inner life dictates the outer resilience.
So resilience comes from flexible obedience, not rigid control.
Exactly. Leaders who trust guidance gain an inner stability that external circumstances, layoffs, market downturns, political unrest, they just can't shake it.
There are refuges outside the corporate walls.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, think of Daniel and Joseph. They faced political intrigue, exile, being thrown into pits and dens. I mean, unbelievable pressure.
Extreme pressure.
Yet their core trust in God produced this clarity and resilience. They didn't panic. They didn't try to manipulate every situation. They maintained an inner peace because their strength was anchored outside of their circumstances.
They surrender the outcome. And that brings us back to humility, which the sources present as the catalyst for wisdom. Humility is the gateway.
It is, and it's not self-deprecation. It's not feeling bad about yourself. Humility is the accurate recognition of your own limitations.
And your own needs.
Yes. Which then allows you access to divine insight. It's asking for wisdom because you recognize you lack it. Humility is a lens through which God's wisdom flows, and it lets leaders respond to correction or failure without that crippling defensiveness that ego always creates.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture,
Yeah,
the true measure of leadership isn't your personal achievements, is it? It's not your title or your bank account.
not at all. It's the leaders you develop, the ones you multiply. Legacy isn't owning a domain. It's stewarding a mission that will outlast you.
That multiplication principle is just so critical. I'm thinking of Paul's instruction to Timothy, entrust the teachings to reliable people.
Who will also be qualified to teach others. Leadership has to be reproductive. If your organization collapses the day you step away, you are a leader, you are a manager.
When we see that in the example of Nehemiah, he didn't build the walls of Jerusalem by himself.
No, he empowered the people. He assigned responsibility to families, to groups. He multiplied his influence by decentralizing power, not consolidating it.
So ultimately, the highest goal is leading without ego.
Ego is the hidden barrier to influence. It's always seeking recognition, credit, and control. Surrender, on the other hand, seeks God's approval and alignment.
So if a leader wants to stop operating from ego, what's one thing they should stop doing today?
Stop demanding credit. Ego-free leadership cultivates trust, loyalty, and innovation because the team experiences your influence as genuine service, not as self-promotion coming down from the top.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you listening right now? Surrendered leadership really transforms leadership from this frenetic, striving pursuit of fragile power to a humble, resilient stewardship of responsibility. It's an invitation to trade constant striving for divine guidance, external pressure for inner peace.
And temporary, brittle success for an enduring, lasting impact.
Leadership is strongest precisely when it is surrendered.
It is that paradoxical strength of letting go. It cultivates clarity, wisdom, and a resilient influence that the world just cannot imitate, and it can't collapse. It grants you the ability to navigate chaos with the stability that those who rely only on their own strength will simply never find.
So the journey begins with one simple but profound question for you. Are you willing to measure your leadership success in the next year, not by the accolades or the control you have, but by the number of lives you've touched and the decisions you've aligned with eternal purposes? What single step of control, maybe it's a delegation, maybe it's just a moment of silence or reflection, what one thing are you prepared to release today?